quite the interesting stories making the rounds this morning, particularly speaking to the state of Nigeria's economy. But before we get into the inflationary figures we're seeing this morning, let's talk a little about Rivers State. Now, many were asking the question of how constitutional it is for a sole administrator to appoint 23 administrators in the local government council. I don't know if this is the decision that has seen the House of Reps inaugurate a 21-member oversight committee with the call on the administrator to report back to the National Assembly on every step he intends to take going forward. What do you make of this developments in the wake of the latter?
Right. Thank you for having me once again. I think we have actually missed the process itself. There's an abuse of process in the first place because if you look at the conditionalities that is attached with a state of emergency, ideally, the first thing to do is not for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to actually outrightly said suspend the governor, the state House of Assembly. The first thing is that the National Assembly is expected to take over the responsibility of the state assembly, so that from there we now have it. But now that we have jumped the process, so the fact now remains that the sole administrator, believing that he has the power and the ears of the president, you recall that the first thing that even happens to him, he emerged, immediately he was appointed, the first thing he did was to release the money that has been withheld for the local government allocations, and that's the first. That shows that there is an empowerment on it. Maybe from that he now thinks the next thing for him is to do what is to actually go ahead and appoint a sole administrator, and it's quite instructive. And I want to appreciate the National Assembly, especially the House of Reps, saying that no, you do not have the right to actually go ahead to appoint all those things. You must do it in their own, by them leading you or by them guiding you. And that's why they have actually appointed 21 House of Rep member for an oversight function. But another question now is that how do we finance all this oversight? Is it from the purse of the federal government or from the purse of state government? As this money, it's also clear that he has invited the governor, democratically elected governor.
More like someone. When you say invite, you make it seem very
right. He has summoned him, and we are also seeing a lot of things happening in that state. We've seen people on white rallying around that they support the suspension of Fubara, which government and police did not question them. But also people in black saying that it is not good, and those people are dispersed. So we have seen that there is a different level of treating different people, which does not really align as expected.
Doctor, let's talk a little bit about this summon since you raised it. Part of the agendas for this summon is an explanation into the activities of the governor in the last 2 years, particularly with the local governments in question. Is it in the position of the sole administrator to set up a panel of inquiry into what the governor has done in the last 2 years?
I don't think he has that capacity to even summon the governor. His own is to face where he should start where he meets the state and continue from there. I don't think he has capacity to probe what has been happening. Perhaps he's not a democratically elected governor, so he has not a lot of rights to actually go ahead. And we are looking at legal interpretation to this as well, because we cannot allow it to be going, because the precedent that President Obasanjo created is what is actually happening now. He is now dipping it the more, and it's in the wrong trajectory. So I think he does not have the capacity to actually query that, because there was a state assembly at that time, and he doesn't have the capacity. So I think it's too much for him to actually go ahead to some. And I must tell you, I hope this is not be calculated attempt not to allow the governor to return back, because my major fear is that after 6 months, what happened? Do you think Fubara can still come, or they will declare it more, that they will add to it, and before you know, they will say she come and do 1 month before the end of his administration?
Now all this is also subject to legal interpretations of what the Constitution provides under the office of a sole administrator. But whilst that is being contemplated, we're looking at item number 2 now on our lineup. The sole administrator in himself is now threatening legal action against the Nigerian Bar Association in Rivers State over a certain 300 million naira which was gifted to them for their conference funding. I don't know what you make of this development.
Right, it's quite interesting because when we saw the thing play out, and that's why our judiciary must also be careful too, especially the NBA, because you may be rubbish if you don't follow the due process. Though they may not have envisaged what has actually happened, but as a democratic elected governor that was suspended, or perhaps as a law custodians of our laws, they think that what happened there was not a good one, and they decided to move it to another place, and they have said it clearly that it was a gift. It was not a condition for them to come and host or organize their program in the state. So I think I'm seeing, so that I'm still taking them to court too, and there will be fireworks in the court of law, which is quite accepted. But for me, I think what they are doing is very, very instructive, because they cannot be supporting a seemingly negative approach to democracy. Because for you to suspend the governor of a state and you put a sole administrator, it is not something that we should tolerate. Perhaps if it continues like this and they didn't condemn it, to be a continuous process. So if you can take them to court and ask them why wouldn't you do this, and they justify it, I think the court will have the say. Because for now, there's no way you can actually hold them beyond going to court.
Well, it may seem as though it's all eyes on the courts in Rivers State, with the cases filed by the sole administrator as against the NBA over 300 million naira, which was, in quotes, a gift for their conference funding. Now, moving away from Rivers, our third item in the news is a growing concern that in over 9 years, there have been different Ponzi schemes in Nigeria that desperate Nigerians, in a quick bid to double their monies and upscale their financial fortunes, have fallen prey to. The latest being CBEX. And I tell you one thing for sure, Doctor, up until yesterday was the first time I heard of that trading platform. It went viral on X with people posting how much they had lost. Now, a rough calculation by the publications this morning is pegging the losses at somewhere around 1.3 trillion naira lost to CBEX. Now, we're looking at INTERPOL and EFCC collaborating on a probe into this massive scam. Is it a case of lack of financial education, or Nigerians not learning from history?
Right. So I think about 3 months ago, it was a different message on my phones that I should be part of that platform, that they double what you have. You know, some even say every day you get 2% or what have you. Before you know, you get your money back. You know, because of the experience we've had over time, especially the experience. And I told them that, well, for me, you know, I try to look at the conditionalities, and as a rational person, as an economist, so I see that there is no business that will give you double your, you know, income as at that short period. Even interest is around 27 points and to 30. So how can you say you will get it? So for me, I think Nigerians want to do a quick win at all time. And because they want to do a quick win, they fall into this prey. You know, Ponzi scheme. What is even Ponzi scheme? Ponzi scheme simply means unrealistic profits. And if you embark on it, you know you are taking a risk. I have someone who took the risk. You know, he was there with me. He always tell me, I've made this, I've made that, I've made this. He now said, well, I've recouped my major investment. So if it happens, it actually. And when it happens, about 2 days ago, he called me and said, thank God he has me. So some people are able to actually make out their own. Why? You know, some people are falling prey to it, and that's what actually happened. I can tell you during that time, I have people who made a lot of millions that time, and they're still millionaire. But people that came after them actually suffered it. So, but who do we blame is the question now. Should we blame Nigeria? Should we blame our authorities that allowed those things to happen? But there's an argument from the authority that even those people does not have company in Nigeria. They don't exist in Nigeria. You know,
but we saw them picketing a said office of CBEX.
Right. I don't think it's not their office. You know, like someone told you, CBEX will not come directly. CBEX will say a partnership with CBEX. That's what they actually. And before you go there, you won't see anybody. So the first thing is that how do they operate in our soil without having a physical office, without operating? But the world is global now. You cannot stop people from going online to partake in whatever they want to partake. Since some of them will not even come directly, you know, to our CAC. You know, it is when you register with Corporate Affairs Commission, we know that you're a registered company in Nigeria. And until you also have physical office, we say, okay, they're actually in office. So now, should we blame the government? Yes. Should we blame the people that are involved? Yes. The answer is yes for both. So for people who actually embarked on it, I think they have actually see the negative side of it. So I think the question is, are we going to even learn from actually not embarking on such? Because, and I find it difficult to believe that people will learn. People will continue to take the risk, especially in Nigeria that will have. In fact, let's even look at gambling. You know, gambling is being institutionalized and people are actually doing it. I think it's even fair compared to the CBEX. So for government, now there was a meeting which I had with CBN was there. We have NITDA was there. We have FCCPC was there. And I raised the question. I said there's a regulatory gap in Nigeria. And they said, what's the regulatory gap? I said, okay, people that are doing online business, people that are doing e-commerce, people that are doing loan sharks, who is actually regulating them? The question is that CBN, yes. The answer is no for CBN. And NITDA is saying that they are looking at it. And I said, no. There should be either a unit, there should be either a commission, there should be either an agency that will look into this, because these people that are creating this problem, people that are doing all these CBEX, they are in the cloud. You must be there with them. That the minute they are launching those their app, they are launching those their sites, somebody is there watching them and said, no, you cannot operate in Nigeria. You know, you blocked them. Until we have that regulatory institution, that's where we can stop it. Because if you go now, who do you arrest now? In fact, I listened to EFCC spokesperson this morning. You know, the way he was talking, you know, they don't have regulatory, they don't even know them, they don't operate in Nigeria. Nigerians have been falling prey. They now ask him, how are you going to tame? They say, well, we are working with INTERPOL, we are working with this. And we know that definitely when you say INTERPOL, you know, it's a different ball game. So I don't see them recouping their money. I only see them learning from what has just happened.
Now, The Guardian was also nice enough to give us an infographics. One of the pointers you said as to how people can spot them is the unregistered and unregulated space in which they operate. If we zoom into The Guardian in the course of the conversation, we'll look at some of other ways. They say 5 ways to spot a Ponzi scheme. One is the other one you mentioned, high returns with no risk.
Right.
Guaranteed return on investment, unknown owners / corporate office, pressure to reinvest and recruit new investors. I think this is a place where a lot of persons have their contacts bugging them. Like you said, people were calling you with the offer to join this. How do Nigerians cope with this pressure to reinvest
right.
and recruit new
So
investors?
let's take it from my mouth. That number 2 is the main questions, because you discover that those that are being recruited, they are looking for how to recruit others, because you know why, there's a prey that when you bring more people, you have additional points and additional money. So before you know that, people will start calling for. In fact, it was a bombardment on my phone that, okay, join this, you get that, and we are clear about it that this is not a good one. But Nigerians are so adamant. When you tell them that, they will say, okay, where is the work? Is it not better to take the risk than not to do any other thing? And that's the thing. But on this number 5, that's what I want us to look at. Unregistered and unregulated. This is government responsibility. Since they are not registered, declare them, you know, illegal. Though they declare about 64 companies, but they are not part of it. And that's how these people operate. You know, they will not come with their own name. They will just say they partner others. So government must make sure that any business that is not registered, they actually, you know, blacklist them as it were. And there must be a regulation on how people actually do business. Though when there is no regulation, when there is regulatory gap, like I said, people thrive, you know, in those bad businesses. And that's it. Then a guarantee return on investment. When you say guarantee on return investment, as a Nigerian, when you see your 3, 4, 5 friend, you know, getting money, you know, you think, if A can get it, B can. Let me also, you know, they wouldn't tell you how the risk is like. But I can tell you, even those that are embarking on CBEX, they knew that someday it's going to crash. But the only pain is that how can we trade off such amount up to 1.3 trillion into those things? So I think Nigeria government also need to be reorientate Nigerians that this money you are actually putting there can also be putting on other things that are much more genuine.
I think that's now non-financial education.
Right.
I don't know if it's not our culture or our place as Nigerians to be financially educated. At best, people who come into trade, most times they have someone they learn the trade from. In the families, apart from those who offer their children some form of formal education and they take subjects like economics in school, I don't think there's this consciousness in society to financially educate people and tell people this is a scam, this is a fraud, and ways to be able to not fall prey.
I don't agree that it's not issue of financial education, it's the issue of greed.
Greed.
Yes, because for you to have garner 200,000 and said you want to put it in a Ponzi scheme and you want to get 300,000, you are educated already. You only want double income. You only want something extra. You only want a quick win. You only want to double your money in a quick succession. That is the problem. It's not about financial education, because for you to even garner that money, you should have, and that is why I used that one language at the beginning, that a rational person would not want to do this. You know, just like gambling. You know, when you have 500,000, say, okay, if I put it, I'll get 1.5 million. You know, a rational person will say no. What if? What if the question is the difference? That we don't have financial education. I bet to disagree, because you can also use that money to buy gold. You can also use that money. We are going to financial education. You can also use that money to buy gold, and said over time, I sell it back and I reinvest. So if you buy gold, what would have happened? We are so sure that most time it doesn't come down. You're going to make profit, but at what level of profit? At what margin? You know, people don't want something marginal. They want something very, very high, and that's what brings about going into Ponzi scheme.
That's the time for the return.
The time for the return on investment. In fact, you can even buy something and do buy and selling and make your money. You can buy treasury bill. You can do a lot of things. You can even and we are even leaving one sector without talking about them. SEC. In fact, if you ask me properly, I will say this fall on the purview. That the Security Exchange Commission. Yes, I think this fall on their purview. They need to look at it very well. If it's not, it's possible it's not a part of their act. They need to put it in their act and be looking at all this part. So for me, I think when you say financial education, people know where they can put their money, but people want a quick money, especially will I say, what do you call it? We have the baby boomer, we have the Gen Z, we have the millennial. So this set of people, tell somebody who's above 50 to trade this, he will tell you no, because it doesn't have. There's this, my old man, I told him that, sir, can you transfer such money? He said, no, I want to collect the money. I need to collect the money. I'll go to another, I'll go to the bank and send it. I said, no, sir. He said, no. How are you sure they're going to transfer it to you? I don't understand that their process. And that's how you see how conscious they are, because they are not, in that level, in that realm. By the time he follows my own and went to a POS and they transfer the money, he now asked me, did you? I said, I saw it. I said, what a miracle. It was very astonished. So these are the difference. But people of Gen Z, they want to just wake up in the morning and see the alerts.
Quite interesting. Well, now let's talk about another issue in the news. Many have blamed for the reason why some Nigerians give into desperation: a rising cost of living. And despite the rebasing of certain indices engaging our inflationary rates, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics posted another inflationary figure for the month of March, and it is on an upward trend, 24.23%, up from what it was. Looking at this economically speaking, we look at items like food and non-alcoholic beverages, part of those highlighted items as to why inflationary figures are going up. Doctor, is this coming to you as a shock? Did you see it coming that despite the NBS's efforts to rebase the economy, this is now the case?
Well, I saw it coming because if you look at the legacy problems, the challenges we are having, it has not actually been solved. You recall that our major problem is food inflation. And I recall vividly that in the year 2023, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, precisely in June, declared state of emergency on food security. And we said, if you can solve this problem, that would have reduced our problem of inflation and standard of living in Nigeria. And look at it today. If you look at the food inflation, is a major component of this. Then if you have our supply chain problem solved, it will reduce the problem. So how does supply chain actually affect food? The major problem of Nigeria, even businesses, let alone even food, is problem of supply chain. Now, what is supply chain? Supply chain is just the movement of item from the manufacturer down to the consumers. What happened in between? And first thing that you have to consider, there is the transportation. And when we say transportation, the common movement of items from farm, to even the city center, it's a problem. So if you go to, let's say farm produce are much more in the northwest, so let's look at Kebbi, let's look at Sokoto, let's look at all those places. So if you want to move it down to even Kano, that is commercial in nature, let alone Abuja or Lagos, you see that the cost of transportation is becoming serious very, very high. And that's why the ideal of CNG comes about. So we're thinking if you bring about all these solutions, it would have solved the problem of supply chain. So without supply chain, and apart from that, we also look at government working on irrigation, whereby you can farm throughout. Then government said, I've told the state to give me land. I was thinking, government, it's not easy to get land from this state. You must let them buy into the concept of this land and this farming, but they fail to do the needful. So it's pretty difficult. No irrigation, no all-round farming, until we see farming, food production as the core thing that we must do in Nigeria. Because let me tell you, before, we do not spend up to 70% or less 60% of our income on food. But now, tell me an household that does not spend 60% of his income on food. So if you look at 60% on income on food, you look at 20% on transportation, you look at 10% on rent, before you now pay school fees, before you now pay rent. So it becomes a serious problem until we solve that basic needs. And when you go to other countries where we have 2.5, 3%, inflation, nothing. Is there anything magical they are doing? But they have actually make sure they subsidize everything around their food. And let me also give you this. We will continue to say who does well and who does not. During Muhammadu Buhari era, he actually did well in terms of rice and self-sufficiency in rice. You can recall that he even blocked the importation of
border. Yes, he closed the border.
Right. So if he has done that one significantly, and I'm sure up to now, 80% of Nigeria still eats local rice compared to before. In fact, the country, what's the country now? The country now that we usually buy rice from have to say they want to come and invest in rice farming. Is it Thailand? In Nigeria, because it has actually affected their market. So if President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should also look at the other areas, especially like pepper, tomato, onions, and look at how, because those things are the one that is actually causing the problem, how we can actually bring self-sufficiency in that, empower people in that area, and even create a what we call cargo airport that can even when we have self-sufficiency, we can actually now export. So these are the areas until we solve those legacy problems. And we must also come back to insecurity. A major place that we actually have all these things from: Plateau, Benue, they actually, even Kogi, they're actually under the siege of insecurity until we look for final solution. Look at what's happened in Bokos. How many people want to go to farm in that?
And that's largely agrarian.
Largely agrarian, that they have this Irish and all that other things. Nobody wants to go to farm in that area. So who also want to go to farm in Benue? So if you look at those areas, it's what we must solve, and we must go scientific. Like I told people, we must stop using that approach of carrying gun. We must go with kinetic and non-kinetic. And major thing now is to look at the traditional rulers. Under your jurisdiction, what has happened? Doesn't mean you don't have an intelligence about it. Doesn't mean you are not informed. These are the things we must do if we want our inflation to actually drop. It's critical that we solve those legacy problems. And how is our productivity? Again, you will recall that most companies are moving out of Nigeria. We are not looking at it, and it's a problem. And that's what we call import substitution. Once they are moving, if you have a good substitution in Nigeria, why do we have to bother? So government must have to invest in those manufacturing sector, so that all those things that are moving out of Nigeria, we can have it in our way. I recall also during Olusegun Obasanjo, wheat is what we import more, even up to now. I just said, let's have 60% cassava and 40% wheat in our bread. I recall he practices. How well have you moved over time to develop on it, so that we can have less dependence on wheat? So these are what is causing food inflation in Nigeria.
Now, I also heard you talk about the post-subsidy gains and part of the troubles that have come with it in terms of the cost incurred in transporting food commodities.
Right.
Now, I'm bringing it to the global crash in oil price with NMDPRA talking about Donald Trump's tariffs. I don't know, is it going to be more of the same when we look at inflation across other commodities? Because now in item 5, the NMDPRA is blaming Trump's tariff for crude oil price fall, as PMS imports in the country have also dropped by 30 million litres. What are the implications of this statistics?
Right. So first and foremost, I want to say thanks to Dangote Refinery, because imagine the equation of Dangote out of this analysis. Do you know would have fall and suffer more? Now, the fact remains that Trump administration made it clear that it's American first, even in his campaign. And when they say American first, we should know that a lot of things is going to happen, that is going to affect us. And how does he do it? When he came, he said he increased tariff for Nigeria at 14%. For me, I don't see that as an issue, because for what we are exporting, we are actually giving them for what we are importing, rather, we are actually charging about 27%. So, but the thing is, how do we have the shock absorber? Now, oil is a global commodity. The things that happen globally will definitely happen, locally. So, for us, we should follow the trend, and we should also be smart in policy analysis. That once there is a policy, declaration from America in terms of that relates to oil, is going to actually affect us. I think the oil revenue has dropped, and that is going to affect our budget. Right, because if you look at our budget, I think we are looking at about 80%, $80 per barrel or so. Now it is about 60. It is coming. So it definitely is going to affect the income. So except we have other alternatives to look at it, and that's why I said it's better that we even have Dangote around, and that's why they must continue negotiation of naira dealing with
Naira
Dangote.
for crude deal.
Naira for crude deal. When you do naira for crude deal, Dangote will also sell in naira. It's a two-way thing, so that marketer can actually buy from them. So I think it's a problem that we've seen coming. We only did not take our time to plan for it.
Now, in spite of everything happening in the country, the Minister of Information, Alhaji Idris, is talking about public officials being able to equip themselves in media literacy to curb and fight fake news. It's also coming at a time when there's a debate about public officers also owning private businesses and whatnot in the media. Let's get your thoughts on this charge from the Information Minister.
To actually be the media house, it's very expensive, and it's politically exposed people that majorly have. We can count. Even he himself that is talking, he was the owner or proprietor of a Blueprint newspaper. So he's actually coming from somewhere else, and that would have given much more expose to what is actually doing. When you say media literacy, I think is one thing we must actually look at more. But I think the national orientation is actually doing well this time, because they are trying to
Bless you.
Thank you. I saw some of their adverts, but they only need to do more. But the fact is that it's not the head of agency. They have their spokesperson. They have their media. So those their media should also do more. But they have to also go back to NBC. NBC need to do more. These news have been carried out by agencies. So any agency that actually carry fake news, news that is not well substantiated, they should be sanctioned. So if you sanction them over time, I think by so doing, I've seen them sanction even big television stations. They should also do it. And we have citizen journalism now. And that's the major problem. Everybody go to their Facebook, their Twitter, and Trump actually changed the narrative. You recall in his first tenure, he actually said he's not going to talk to him, and he will just go on his social media post, and before you know, people make their news from it. So I think it's a good one that is coming from him, but you should also make sure that NBC do more.
Now, talking about NBC, there's an interesting perspective coming from the Nobel laureate, Professor Wole Soyinka, where he said that Idris Abdul Karim's song, Tell Your Papa, in reference to the current administration's performance in government, should not have been banned, that it somewhat impedes on freedom of expression. Now, there's been that debate over time on the role of NBC as a regulatory board in curbing such media materials that are viewed from certain perspectives, especially by those in government. Okay. How do we draw this balance in issuing sanctions and not infringing on the rights of freedom of expression?
Right. I think it's not new. We've been seeing several songs being banned, especially songs with foul language. We have seen, but you could see them playing other international media station. But if you look at Idris Abdul Karim's song, before immediately he releases, maybe 10 minutes after, I actually went online and actually watched it.
I like the way you put the timeline there, almost 10 minutes, because the song just was an instant sensation when it came out.
So I just have to watch it, and I saw all what he's saying. It appears anti-government. That's that's clear. But the role of media, sometimes, is being regulated. Sometimes if you allow it to happen, a lot of it will continue to happen. So I think this is politics. People in power want to use their power. I think that's what is actually happening. Because if it's song is for opposition, they wouldn't have actually. But we must see our media coming clean. It must come clean. But this current administration, there are some things they actually embarked on, and they did when they are not in power, but they are not tolerating it now again. Right? And the beauty is that I've seen also Idris Abdulkarim interviewed, and he said he's actually replying to Sheikh Tinubu, not Tinubu and Tinubu government. But if you listen to it, it's trying to say some things that are actually obvious. But let's allow them to do their work, because if you don't allow them to do their work, a lot of things will come and it will have its way.
But the position of Professor Wale Soyinka, does this surprise you? Because many for now thought that he was
support, and he's a statesman, and I think after Tinubu came to government, I've seen Tinubu even naming streets after him in this government. I've seen Tinubu actually celebrate him so much. But as a statesman at his age, if you can do the kind of activities he has done, before, I think nothing stops him from this. So I think he's in the right because he actually suffered those things, freedom of speech at a particular level that he has to even run, avoid a lot of. So if he's saying, I think I want to celebrate him for saying it, because I was surprised too, because I have to go and read what he said again. So they shouldn't have gagged, such thing. I think he's in the right position to say that.
Now, moving to another issue of the economy this morning, it's about the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and its benefits. Experts were urging the federal government to address the weak naira, trade deficits, and insecurity as part of the drivers that are hampering the full benefits of this AFCFTA. What do you make of this call from experts within the space on the need to curb this negative indices?
Right. We're looking at Africa Continental Free Trade Area. For us, when it actually came, I was in one of the high-profile meetings, and I told them that I'm not in support of it. They said, why? I said, well, until we do one or two things. They said, what is the thing? I said, until we said there are some things that can come to our country, and there are some things that should not come to our country. Because if we...
What things are this?
Right. So now, let's look at textile. Until you say, no, don't bring textile to Nigeria, we can bring other things. Those things that will have comparative advantage, those things that will have to protect our infant industry. We should not allow it, because
local production.
Exactly. If we do it, local production we die, because Nigeria will become a dumping ground. And two things happens that is our favor. We have the population and we have the purchasing power. I was in Rwanda, and when I got to Rwanda, I saw Volkswagen producing in Rwanda. And my first question was, what's the population of Rwanda? 13 million. What's the population of Nigeria? Over 200 million. So who are they producing those cars for in Rwanda? And what's the purchasing power of people in Rwanda? You hardly see new car on their streets. But come to Nigeria, cars everywhere. At least 50 million Nigerians can afford the car, even though Tokumbo, So those are the things that we must look at. If not, our country will become a dumping ground. And coming to the issue of weak naira, I recall I went to Cotonou to buy a car. When I went there, I could not go with the money, because it's very big. So when I got there, I have to go with small that I can carry, and I have to deposit it and go back to bank after I've identified the car, deposit for the car. But now it is in the other side.
The reverse is the case.
The reverse is the case. Our money does not even have value. Those country money have value more than. So who will now do trade with us? In fact, go to Nigerian border now. It is very, very dry, because nothing works. No value. I was at the part, and Nigeria also gives some conditionalities. Remember that they have opened the border. That was closure of the border. They expected that immediately they open, things will start happening. Nothing is happening again, because people that are supposed to come and trade with you, they are seeing your naira as being weak. It's nothing to write home about. You are the one now begging them to actually trade with them. So, and that's the major problem of a weak. And then what brings about weak naira is the floating of naira, because you don't allow your naira to be doing up and down. You are looking at, you are throwing it to the market and said any value you want to has, let it has. No country will do that. If you go to any country, was in Kenya, if you even want to change dollar to their currency, they'll be asking for international passport. They want to check you. What are you actually doing? How do you get this money? Why are you changing those money? You know, they want to like know. But Nigeria, it becomes a brick and mortar business where you can go anywhere and actually trade dollar and what have you. These are the things that is causing problem. Until we have a very, very strict way of looking at it and make sure our naira appreciates more, we will continue to suffer and we will not benefit African continental free trade area.
Now, in closing, one issue that has brought tears to the eyes of many sympathetic Nigerians is the recurrent killings in Plateau State. This morning, across major newspapers, the governor, Caleb Mutfwang, has issued apologies to the grieving communities. This is as outrage is growing over fresh attacks. One of the outrages towards statements of the communities needing to defend themselves. The governor also admits to the fact that government has failed them in that regards. Is this the best that we can get in terms of solving or resolving the killings in Plateau?
Well, I think that statement from the governor is uncalled for and is coming so late. I don't even expect him to actually go there and using those statements. Well, for Mutfwang, you know, remember PDP governors met in Oyo. So I was wondering why he's not there. And later I now discovered that he cannot trade off such a problem and move to Oyo State. But, you know, this problem it has root cause and it's not new. I remember from 1999, right? I remember President Olusegun Obasanjo declared state of emergency under Dariye simply because of this. So we must look at the root cause of this. And what is the root cause? Some people argue that it's because of land issues, because some people think they are the owner, or some people think some people came and you just give them the opportunity and they are claiming the ownership. And that's why I always talk about issue of traditional rulers, because those traditional rulers must be aware of what is actually happening and what is likely to happen. Though how will government be proactive? It should be an ongoing consultation. They should not do it one-off and relax. There should be a continuous, you know, sensitization, investigation, and army should be there steady. Because I recall as far back as 20 years, Plateau, in fact, let me tell you, there was a day I went to Plateau for a program. Do you know that there was problem in that city? And they want to declare curfew. So I decided to quickly move out of Jos. My dear brother, it was God that saved us, because, you know, there's a particular religion that no one wants to see, a particular religion, and the car we actually took has a religion emblem. You need to see what happened that day. Some of us think that it's God that actually, you know, saved our life. You know, we have moved, you know, when you move out of the city and you're coming towards Abuja, you know, you are coming to forest and all those things. It was a serious issue. So until we look for final solution to that area, and final solution could be solving the root cause of the problem, which is land related and religious related issue in Jos. But for Mutfwang, I think he needs to do more, because for you to be elected as a governor, you have to. The first priority is to secure life and property of people. Now, another question is that, recall, Mutfwang is a PDP governor. Am I correct?
Yes, please.
We have APC in the national. We must appeal to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to not let it look as if because they are PDP, because they are not APC, it should swing into action and solve the problem. I remember IG say is removing the, you know, I don't like this aftermath. We need to be proactive, not reactive. It appears we are all reactive. The governor admitted that he is reactive, not proactive. You know, the president is also looking at it in that direction. And our president is at home now. He's still not at home. So these are the things we need to actually look into and solve. If not, it can befall any other place.
Now, I see this caution in your call to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Is this in regards of not having to declare state of emergency in Plateau State?
How can he declare state of emergency?
Because I see people calling online that if he attended to River State in that instance where there was no loss of life, whereas in Jos there are over 150 people who have died so far.
So the state of emergency created by Olusegun Obasanjo that time, has it solved the problem? It does not solve the problem. We must solve the root cause of the problem, not declaring state of emergency. You know, even during Buhari, there was killing as well. During Jonathan, there was killing as well. So what are they doing? And that's why I have issue with our presidency, our president and our authorities. You know, once you are a president or you are a governor, why not look to an end to an issue when you are actually in office, so that the next person will have to face different problem. In fact, over 30 states in Nigeria is is having the, military taking some responsibility because of outburst and insecurity. So if we continue like this, even the military will be overwhelmed, the police will be overwhelmed, and it become a problem. That's why we must solve the root cause of the issue. Meet these people. What actually do they want? How can you negotiate with them that, okay, this is how it actually works? And the issue of, and that's why I also see the issue of headers, farmers crisis too. Do you know it has not have solutions? I recall when Minister Wiki came to FCTA, he said, you won't see cow marauding the street again. Do you still see them now?
We still see them.
We still see them. So these are, it's become a lip service. They're not putting action to their words.
Well, we must thank you, Doctor, for taking our time to speak to these issues in the news. We wish you the best of the rest of today.
Thank you for having me.